John's morning began as it always did, with the soft, monotonous hum of the old refrigerator providing a familiar and comforting backdrop to his routine. The large, boxy contraption stood in the very corner of his kitchen, its once white surface now yellowed with age and speckled with a smattering of insignificant, yet noticeable dents and scratches from years and years of use. As John shuffled into the kitchen, the fluorescent light flickered. It cast a sterile, steady glow over the cracked linoleum floor. The floor, a pattern of faded squares alternating in shades of off-white and beige, creaked and groaned under his weight in a predictable, almost rhythmic manner. He approached the refrigerator, its surface cluttered with an assortment of magnets from various local businesses, a pizza place, a dry cleaner, a dentist, whose office John had never actually visited, although he probably should go for a teeth cleaning. Each magnet was a testament to a moment in time, insignificant on its own, but collectively, a mosaic masterpiece of mundane local commerce. The refrigerator's door handle, a plastic piece that once boasted a glossy finish, was now dulled and worn from years of opening and closing. John gripped it, feeling the familiar give of the handle, and pulled the door open. The seal of the door released with a soft, almost inaudible sigh, a sound he had grown accustomed to, so much so that its absence would have been more notable than its presence. The inside of the refrigerator was moderately filled. There were containers of leftovers, neatly labeled with dates that were diligently written in John's chicken scratch handwriting that only he can translate. The shelves, adjustable but never adjusted, were lined with a thin translucent plastic that's slightly sticky to the touch, a testament to spills long cleaned but never quite forgotten. On the top shelf, a carton of milk sat, its expiration date looming. Next to it, a half-empty jar of mayonnaise and a bottle of ketchup with its cap crusted with dried remnants of its contents. The middle shelf housed a collection of Tupperware containers, each holding some remnant of a meal past, their contents obscured by opaque lids. And the lower shelf and crisper drawers were reserved for fresh produce, though the selection was sparse with just a few apples, a solitary cucumber, and a bag of baby carrots nearing the end of their shelf life. The crisper drawers, meant to preserve freshness, were slightly ajar. They held a disorganized array of vegetables and a solitary lemon with its skin slowly surrendering to age. The drawers slid out with a grating sound. The plastic runners were worn from use and never quite aligned as they should, and they certainly never moved with ease. The door of the refrigerator held an assortment of condiments and jars which lined the shelves. Each item was placed with no particular order, a haphazard array of sauces, dressings, and pickled goods. John knew that some of them were well past their due date and should be thrown out, but he ignores them, and they remain in their home. The shelves slightly bowed from the weight and held these culinary afterthoughts with a resigned sag. The refrigerator's hum was John's constant companion in the kitchen, and it seemed to grow louder as he stood there, staring into the chilled space. It wasn't a loud noise, but it was a rather persistent one, a steady drone that had become the soundtrack to his mornings and late-night snacking. The light inside the refrigerator offered a dull, cold glow, and it flickered sporadically, casting odd shadows across the shelves. John closed the refrigerator door, the seal catching and then holding with a soft click, a sound so familiar it was like the satisfying closing of a well-read book. He stood for a moment and for the first time began considering the condition of the appliance. While it had served him well and was a steadfast companion in his daily life, he acknowledged that it was an old, outdated relic from a bygone era of kitchen design. As he made his way to his coffee maker, another simple and unassuming machine that sat next to the sink, John's thoughts lingered on the refrigerator, Perhaps it was time for a new one, he mused. The notion was practical, but it seemed laden with a weightiness that was at odds with the simplicity of the appliance itself. As sunlight entered the kitchen and began casting long, lazy shadows across the floor, the world was waking up. But in John's kitchen, time seemed to stand still, marked only by the steady hum of the old refrigerator. John finally made a decision. He knew it was time. It was time to buy a new refrigerator. With the decision made, John settled into his well-worn armchair, a piece of furniture that, much like his refrigerator, had seen better days. Its fabric was once a vibrant shade of blue, but had faded to a nondescript hue, and the cushions had long ago lost their firmness. He opened his generic laptop and began his research into the world of modern refrigerators. The screen came to life, displaying his usual start page. A search engine set against a plain white background. John typed in Best Refrigerator 2023 and was soon greeted with a deluge of results. There were buying guides, customer reviews, and endless listings for refrigerators of all makes and models. He clicked on the first link to a comprehensive guide to buy a refrigerator and started reading with much enthusiasm. The lengthy article was filled with paragraphs upon paragraphs detailing the various features and technologies now common in refrigerators, some of which John hadn't heard of. There were descriptions of energy efficiency ratings, discussions on the benefits of top freezer versus bottom freezer designs, and an in-depth analysis of indoor ice makers versus traditional ice trays. John read each word carefully, his eyes moving methodically across the screen. He made notes in a small, unassuming notebook, jotting down points about compressor types, the pros and cons of French doors, and the storage capacities of different models. He used a simple ballpoint pen that moved steadily across the paper. It made a scratching sound with a steady rhythm in the quiet room. Then John delved into customer reviews. He found a website dedicated to appliance reviews and began reading through the comments. Some were brief, offering little more than a star rating and a sentence or two. Others were more detailed, with customers describing their experiences with their refrigerators over months or even years. John read each review with the same level of attention, regardless of its length. He paid special attention to reviews that mentioned reliability and longevity because he wanted another one to last him for ages. He read about compressors failing, seals wearing out, and the frustrations of dealing with customer service. He noted the models that received praise for their durability and those that were criticized for frequent repairs. As he read, John occasionally glanced at the clock on the wall, a plain functional timepiece that ticked away the seconds with unerring precision. Time seemed to stretch out, the minutes passing slowly as he immersed himself in the minutiae of refrigerator features. After several hours of reading, John started comparing prices. He visited various retailer websites, each with its own layout and design. He meticulously entered the prices of different models into a spreadsheet. The document was as orderly and unadorned as the rest of his life. He included columns for delivery fees, extended warranties, and potential discounts he could receive. The spreadsheet grew and grew, line by line, as John added more information. He included notes on color options, which were primarily that of stainless steel, black and white, and he noted the dimensions of each model to ensure they would fit in the space in his kitchen. He considered the layout of his kitchen, visualizing where each model might sit and how it would look next to his other appliances, which were equally unremarkable in their functionality. John's research continued as the day turned to evening. He looked up the energy consumption of each model, comparing them to his current refrigerator. He read about the environmental impact of different refrigerants and the insulation materials used in modern refrigerators. He found himself deep in a rabbit hole of information, each click leading him to more data, more specifications, more reviews, and more questions. Dinner was a simple affair, a sandwich made with ingredients pulled from his old reliable refrigerator. He ate at his kitchen table, which was a sturdy no-frills piece of furniture that had served him well over the years. As he ate, his mind was still on refrigerators, on compressors and cubic feet, on shelving configurations and on door styles. After quickly finishing dinner, John returned to his research. He looked at the manufacturer websites and read about their history and their approach to appliance design. He found diagrams showing the airflow in different refrigerator models, graphs depicting noise levels, and tables listing energy consumption under various conditions. Finally, as the night grew late, John closed his laptop. His research was done for the day, but he knew there was still more to do. He had gathered a wealth of information, but the decision was far from made. The old refrigerator hummed in the background, a constant reminder of the task at hand. John went to bed with his mind filled with thoughts of refrigerators. He lay in the darkness, the day's research replaying in his mind. The details swirled together, a monotonous blend of facts, figures, models and features, and as he drifted off to sleep, the last thought that crossed his mind was of compressor types and their respective warranties. The morning light filtered in through the curtains of John's living room, casting a muted glow on the old carpet that was also faded from years of use. He sat at his table surrounded by notes from his previous day's research. He decided he would seek opinions from others about refrigerators, hoping to add a layer of personal experience to the data he had gathered. John started by calling his sister. The phone rang several times before she answered. Her voice was as bright and cheery as always. He explained his quest for a new refrigerator. Her refrigerator was a basic model, nothing fancy or exciting. She recounted her purchasing decision, which was based largely on a sale at a local appliance store. Her descriptions were vague, the details of the model and its features blurred by the mundane of everyday life. But she mentioned the spacious vegetable drawer and how the shelves were easy to clean, her words painting a picture of a perfectly ordinary refrigerator in a perfectly ordinary kitchen. John took notes as she spoke, his pen moving steadily across the paper. He asked about the noise level of her refrigerator and its energy efficiency, but her answers were non-committal. "It's fine, I guess," she said, a phrase that summed up her overall experience. After thanking her, John called his friend Robert. Robert was more of an enthusiast when it came to appliances and had recently purchased a high-end refrigerator. He described it in vivid detail, from the sleek stainless steel exterior to the advanced cooling system that purportedly kept food fresher longer and used less energy. Robert's enthusiasm was evident in his voice, but to John, the details began to blur together. The model numbers and the technical jargon melded into a monotonous stream of information that was beyond his understanding. John's notes became less detailed as the conversation went on, his handwriting a steady, unremarkable script. Once he had finished his call with Robert, John decided to visit his neighbor, Mrs. Thompson. She was an elderly lady who had lived in the neighborhood for decades and had a reputation for being meticulous about her household appliances. John walked to her house, the journey a short and uneventful one. Mrs. Thompson greeted him at the door with a faint smile. Her living room was immaculately kept, every item in its place. They sat on a floral-patterned sofa. The fabric was slightly worn, but still clean. Mrs. Thompson spoke of her refrigerator, a model she had owned for many years. She detailed its maintenance history, recalling each service appointment with surprising accuracy. She described the way the light inside the refrigerator flickered when it was first turned on, and how the third shelf from the top had a minor crack, a flaw she had learned to live with, but not one that she forgot. John listened, his expression one of polite interest. He asked questions, but Mrs. Thompson's answers were more about her routines and less about the refrigerator. She spoke of her weekly cleaning schedule, how she defrosted the freezer compartment, and the way she organized her groceries. Dairy products on the top shelf, meats in the drawer below, vegetables in the crisper. After returning home, John reflected on the conversations he had throughout the day. Each person had provided a different perspective, yet none had brought him any closer to a decision. The information was subjective, based more on personal preferences and habits than the objective data he had collected from his research. He sat down once again at his dining table, surrounded by his notes, the information from his sister, Robert, and Mrs. Thompson was added to the growing pile, their experiences and opinions now part of the complex tapestry of his refrigerator research. John revisited his notes and comparing them, looking for patterns or insights that might guide his decision. The data was overwhelming, a sea of facts, figures, and personal anecdotes. The specifics of each refrigerator model, once so distinct in his mind, now seemed to blend together, each one indistinguishable from the next. As he prepared for bed, the task of choosing a new refrigerator weighed on him. The decision, which had seemed so simple at first, had grown into a burdensome quest for the perfect appliance. The old refrigerator hummed in the background, still a constant reminder of the decision that lay ahead. John lay in bed again with refrigerators in mind, the events of the day replaying in his mind. The conversations, the notes, the endless details, they all swirled together, a monotonous lullaby that slowly guided him to sleep. Like always, John woke to the hum of his old refrigerator, a constant in the quiet of the morning. He planned to visit several appliance stores today to see refrigerators in person. He hoped that viewing them firsthand would provide the clarity he needed to make his decision. After a simple breakfast of toast and some coffee, John prepared for his outing. He chose a comfortable pair of shoes that were well worn but sturdy, along with a light jacket because the weather is unpredictable this time of year. He grabbed his notes and a tape measure to verify dimensions. His first stop was a large appliance store on the outskirts of town. He parked in the huge parking lot with the lines of empty spaces creating a grid of tarmac and white paint. Inside the store, rows of refrigerators stood side by side, their doors closed and lights off, like silent sentinels in a cold, fluorescent-lit landscape. A salesperson approached with her smile practiced and her name tag gleaming. She introduced herself as Linda and asked how she could assist him. John explained his mission, and Linda led him through the aisles. She pointed out various models and their features. She spoke of energy efficiency, warranty terms, and special promotions with a rehearsed ease. Her words flowed in a steady stream, the technical jargon and sales pitches melding together, seeming foreign to John. John listened politely as his eyes scanned the appliances. He opened refrigerator doors, peering inside at the layouts. The interiors were pristine, the shelves and bins unmarked by use. He measured dimensions. The tape measure's metallic sound, sharp contrast to the quiet of the store. He thanked Linda and left the store. His mind was swirling with new information, but he was no closer to a decision. He drove to a second store that was smaller and closer to the center of town. The experience was much the same: rows of refrigerators, a helpful salesperson, and a barrage of information. John found himself overwhelmed by the choices. The refrigerators, each boasting an array of features and designs, seemed to blur into one indistinct mass. He struggled to remember which model had the adjustable shelving he liked, or which had the more efficient cooling system. After visiting several stores, John's notebook was filled with additional notes and observations, but his mind was no clearer. The multitude of options only made his decision more difficult. As he returned home, the sun was setting, casting long shadows across the quiet streets. John felt a sense of fatigue, not from physical exertion, but from the mental toll of the day. The endless array of refrigerators, the sales pitches, the bright lights of the stores, all had left him feeling drained. He parked his car and sat for a moment. The silence of the vehicle, a stark contrast to the constant hum of the stores. He thought about his old refrigerator waiting for him at home, its familiar sound a reminder of the decision that still loomed large. John stepped out of the car and walked to his house, the key turning in the lock with a familiar click. Inside, the old refrigerator greeted him with its steady hum. He sat at his kitchen table, again surrounded by his notes, the events of the day replaying in his mind. The journey to find a new refrigerator evolved into a daunting and exhausting endeavor. As he prepared for bed, the thought of another day of research loomed over John's head like a dark, heavy cloud. The thought was a tiresome step in the seemingly endless journey to find the perfect refrigerator. John awoke to a morning draped in a veil of overcast sky, the light diffusing softly through his bedroom window. He decided to dedicate the day to sifting through the wealth of information he gathered, hoping to edge closer to a decision about the refrigerator. The kitchen, with its old refrigerator standing silently in the corner, seemed to watch him as he prepared his usual breakfast. The appliances now felt like a ticking clock, marking the time passing as he inched towards a decision. John spread out his notes on the table, a patchwork of handwritten pages, printouts from websites, and brochures from appliance stores. He began by organizing the extensive volume of notes, aligning them in neat piles based on categories like features, prices, reviews, and personal opinions. John methodically revisited each model he had considered. He read through the specifications again, comparing them side by side, the energy efficiency ratings, the storage capacities, the warranty terms. Each detail was scrutinized and weighed. He cross-referenced this with the notes from his store visits, recalling the feel of each refrigerator's handle, the sound of the doors closing, and the layout of the shelves. He pondered over the customer reviews, trying to discern patterns. Were complaints about a particular model consistent across different sources? Did the positive reviews highlight features that were important to him? The subjectivity of these reviews made them both valuable and challenging to interpret. Lunchtime arrived and John prepared a sandwich with mechanical precision and continued reviewing notes as he ate. The table was engulfed by his notes, and his mind was still entangled in the complexities of refrigerator features and specifications. In the afternoon, John focused on the financial aspects. He revisited the prices, including potential delivery charges and extended warranties. He calculated the long-term cost implications, considering energy consumption rates and the longevity of each model. His calculator clicked softly with each entry. The numbers on its display a cold, impartial contribution to his decision-making process. As he worked, the sky outside darkened and a light rain was beginning to tap against the windows. The sound provided a rhythmic backdrop to his thoughts and a natural, complementing sound to the hum of the refrigerator. John then considered the aesthetic aspects. How would each model look in his kitchen? Would the finish match his other appliances? He imagined each refrigerator in place of his old one, visualizing them in the space, trying to gauge how they would alter the room's dynamics. As the day waned into evening, John's deliberation had stretched for hours, yet a decision seemed as distant as ever. He felt a sense of weariness, not just from the day's efforts, but from the cumulative toll of the process. John tidied up his notes, stacking them neatly on the table, and decided he would return to them tomorrow. Perhaps a fresh start would bring new insights, or at least the energy to continue the search. He retired to bed, the day's deliberations swirling in his mind like the nights before. The hum of the refrigerator followed him as he drifted off to sleep. His last thoughts tonight were of shelves and drawers, of finishes and features, all floating in a dreamlike parade of refrigerators, each vying for a place in his kitchen. The following day, John awoke with a sense of resolve and energy. He spent the night mulling over refrigerators in a series of dreams that were as vivid as they were mundane. He decided that he would seek second opinions today, hoping that some more fresh perspectives might clear the fog of indecision. He started by revisiting the appliance store where he had met Linda. The store, with its rows of gleaming refrigerators, seemed unchanged, though John felt the weight of his prolonged decision-making process as he walked through the aisles. Linda greeted him with the same practiced smile, asking if he had made any progress. John explained his situation and outlined the models he was considering. Linda listened, nodding occasionally, her responses measured and professional. She reiterated the key selling points of each model. Most were echoes of previous conversations, but she gave a few new insights about energy-saving benefits of a few models. He left the store with a polite thank you and a few extra notes. His next stop was a different store, one he hadn't visited before. The layout was similar to the earlier store, with rows of refrigerators lined up in silent testimony to modern appliance technology. A salesperson approached, introducing himself as Mike. Mike was enthusiastic, to say the least, as he guided John through the models. He emphasized the latest features and smart technology that allowed remote monitoring, adjustable humidity drawers, and energy-saving modes that promised lower utility bills. John listened, but the extravagant features and functions failed to sway him. He didn't really need remote monitoring. He wanted something with no-frills reliability. John thanked Mike and left the store. The sky was overcast with a blanket of grey that mirrored his indecisive mood. He decided to make one final stop to visit Greg, a friend who had recently purchased a refrigerator. Greg welcomed him into a cozy, well-maintained kitchen. The refrigerator stood proudly against the wall, its surface shiny and unmarked. Greg spoke highly of it, praising its quiet operation and spacious interior. He opened the refrigerator, showing off the LED lighting and the adjustable shelves. John inspected the appliance, noting its features and design. Greg's review was positive and gave John a few new perspectives to consider that evening. After returning home, John felt a mix of exhaustion and clarity. The day's conversations didn't provide a definitive answer, but they had underscored some features and reiterated the importance of personal preference in such a decision. His own needs, his kitchen's layout, his habits, these were the factors that would ultimately guide his choice. The decision was daunting, but the day's journey had brought a sense of purpose. He would make his decision not based on the opinions of others, but on what suited him best. As night fell, John prepared for bed. He decided that he would make his decision guided by his own needs and preferences. The morning dawned clear and bright, a stark contrast to the overcast days that had accompanied John's refrigerator search. He could feel that today was the day he would finally make his decision. He approached the task with a mix of trepidation and relief, eager to conclude the prolonged saga. After his usual breakfast, John settled at his dining table, now more a command center of notes and brochures than a place for meals. He took a deep breath and began, once more, to sift through the information. He revisited each model he had considered, weighing their features against his needs and preferences. The energy efficiency ratings, the storage capacities, the aesthetics, each aspect was considered and reconsidered. He envisioned each model in his kitchen, imagining how it would fit into his daily routine. John found himself lost in the details, the pros and cons of each option. He weighed the advice and opinions he had gathered, blending them with his own observations and preferences. As the morning wore on, John found his thoughts circling back to one particular model. It wasn't the most advanced, nor the most expensive, but it had a simplicity and functionality that appealed to him. Its design was unobtrusive, fitting his kitchen's aesthetic. The storage space was ample, and the energy efficiency was within the range he desired. He took a break for lunch, a simple affair of soup and bread. As he ate, he found his gaze drifting to his old refrigerator. It had been a faithful appliance, serving him well over the years. There was a feeling of sentimentality in the thought of replacing it, a feeling he hadn't anticipated. He soon returned to his notes and made his final comparisons. He considered the long-term costs, the warranty, and the delivery options. He thought about the layout of the shelves, the capacity of the freezer, the ease of cleaning. Each factor was a piece of the puzzle, and he felt them slowly falling into place. By mid-afternoon, John had made his decision. He felt a sense of calm as he picked up the phone to place the order. The salesperson on the other end was efficient, processing his purchase with a series of clicks and confirmations. John scheduled the delivery and marked the date on his calendar with a sense of finality. After the call, John sat quietly for a moment, the weight of the decision sinking in. He had spent countless hours researching, deliberating, and seeking opinions. The process had been exhaustive and overwhelming, but now it was done. He had chosen a refrigerator that met his needs, one that he felt confident in. The remainder of the day passed in a blur. John found himself distracted with thoughts of the refrigerator he had just purchased. Had he made the right choice? Would he be satisfied with it? The questions were inevitable, a natural response to the conclusion of his lengthy search. John found it difficult to sleep that night. His mind replayed the decision-making process, analyzing and reanalyzing his choice. He pictured his new refrigerator in his kitchen, imagining the change it would bring. The old refrigerator still hummed in the background, a sound that was now tinged with a sense of nostalgia. It had been a constant in his life for so long, and the thought of its impending replacement brought a mix of emotions. John finally fell asleep. He had dreams of jumbled refrigerators and kitchens, of doors opening and closing, of shelves being stocked and emptied. The decision was made, but its impact lingered, a reminder of the meticulous journey he had undertaken. The day of the refrigerator's arrival dawned with a sense of anticipation for John. He had cleared a path in his kitchen, ensuring easy access for the delivery. His old refrigerator stood silently, its surface now cleared of the magnets and notes that had adorned it for years. The delivery truck arrived in the late morning, its arrival heralded by the low rumble of its engine. John watched from his window as two workers carefully maneuvered the new refrigerator off the truck and onto a dolly. His heart raced with a mix of excitement and apprehension. The workers rang the doorbell, and John greeted them and directed them to the kitchen. As they wheeled in the new appliance, John felt nostalgia for the old refrigerator, now standing aside. The workers were efficient with removing the old refrigerator and installing the new one with practice ease. Once in place, the new refrigerator looked almost out of place in John's kitchen. Its surface was unblemished, the finish gleaming under the kitchen lights. The workers plugged it in, and the refrigerator came to life with a quiet hum, a sound that different but not unpleasant to John's ears. After the workers left, John stood alone in his kitchen facing his new appliance. He opened the refrigerator, the seal releasing with a gentle whoosh. The interior was pristine, the shelves and drawers waiting to be filled. The LED lights cast a bright, even glow that illuminated the white interior. John began the process of transferring his food from the old refrigerator to the new, but he realized that stocking it was more than a mere transfer of items. It was an opportunity to reorganize and optimize. He approached the task with the same meticulousness that had characterized his purchase decision. Each shelf was considered for its height and temperature zone, leading him to place dairy products and eggs in the cooler upper shelves, while reserving the lower shelves for raw meats separated to prevent any cross-contamination. Vegetables and fruits found their designated spots in the humidity-controlled crispers, carefully sorted to prolong freshness. The door shelves, with their varying temperature, were reserved for condiments, jars, and bottles, arranged by frequency of use for convenience. This thoughtful organization not only reflected John's methodical nature, but also his newfound appreciation for the capabilities of his modern appliance, turning a routine task into a satisfying exercise in efficiency and order. As he stocked the refrigerator, John felt a growing sense of satisfaction. The decision, which had consumed so much of his time and thought, seemed now to be the right one. The refrigerator fit perfectly into the space, its design both functional and aesthetically pleasing. John stood back to admire his new purchase. It was more than just an appliance. It was the result of a journey, a decision made through careful consideration and meticulous research. The rest of the day passed quietly. John found himself occasionally stopping to open the refrigerator just to look inside, to assure himself of its reality. The new hum of the refrigerator, now a part of his home's soundscape, was a reminder of the change he had embraced. That night, as John prepared for bed, he felt a sense of contentment. The decision had been made, the refrigerator installed, and his kitchen transformed. He lay in bed, the quiet of the house around him, and realized the hum of the old refrigerator was gone, replaced by the softer sound of the new. He drifted off to sleep, the journey of the refrigerator now complete. It had been a task marked by deliberation and detail, a mundane quest that had, in its own way, become a significant part of his life. Now it was done. A chapter closed, with the quiet hum of the new refrigerator, a gentle lullaby.